there's a lot of therapy in writing this. I mean, it was super emotional, Nick. I mean, I wrote my story in there, and I was kind of documenting stories I've had with patients that hopefully that the reader can relate with. It was super emotional, but so it was therapy. It was my therapy, but it's also, I'm ready to launch this and announce it to the world, because this method, this holistic framework works.
When I say the word health, or even the concept of health and wellness, what comes to mind? Where does your head go? What thoughts, what visuals, what feeling do you have towards those words? That's really what today's episode ended up being about. It's talking to someone who's a doctor who goes beyond the medicine, goes beyond the ways that we typically talk about in Western medicine. We're really getting into functional medicine and how our mind relates to that. It's the mind-body. It's how our body expresses itself. And so if you're someone who is curious about, hey, I either am ailing for some reason, I'm not feeling well, or I want to feel better, it's going to be a great conversation for you. So please stick around and hear a really cool perspective on how we build a relationship to our own health and wellness. All right, hey everybody, I'm here with someone who's a clinical director, wellness consultant, author, researcher, and entrepreneur within the health and wellness field. He's also a board-certified functional medicine practitioner and a clinical nutritionist. This dude is an overachiever. Having endured a life-threatening sports accident at 18, which led to a chronic health issue like type 1 diabetes and digestive failure, he's transformed his harrowing experiences into a source of strength and inspiration. And now he's guiding others on a journey to their own health. And beyond those professional accolades, he's also an avid explorer and a family man. He resides in Danville, California with his wife and 2 kids. And his passion for adventure in the outdoors informs both his personal life and his holistic approach to health. Please welcome my friend, Dr. Ryan Lazarus. Thanks for being here, Ryan.
Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate it. I'm honored and excited to talk with you. And, you know, I congratulate you on a great podcast. I've had an opportunity to listen to the previous ones before me. And, you know, I love the message and I love the authenticity. So I'm excited to be here.
I appreciate that. And back at you, it's when you and I had connected, I guess it's maybe 1 or 2 years ago at this point, because time isn't real anymore with post-COVID. But it was, you really opened up with like a deep share around why you do what you do. And I find that so much more interesting than what anybody does, right? It's like, what's the driver behind your mission and your passion? So let's go way back in time to when you were little. What did you dream you'd be when you grew up?
Yeah, I thought I'd be a baseball player, was obsessed with sports. So kind of classic meathead kid. If it wasn't baseball, it might be soccer. I'm too little for football, too small for basketball. So I defaulted to baseball and I'd be a pitcher. Yeah, that didn't work out. So I moved on to the next journey.
What was it about sports in general, though, when you were a kid? Like, what was because again, you're a guy who often talks about the meaning behind what you do or the why that you do it. What was it about baseball?
It was strategic. As I started to learn about it, I realized it's a big chess game. It's very cerebral. You have to be calculated with it. You have to constantly be thinking all the time. It requires a lot of motor skill. I was pretty athletic when I was younger, and so felt like, I'm pretty good at this, and I feel like I have a good baseball IQ, so felt like I could go to the next level, and then realized the next level, everybody thinks that way, and so a couple of things also derailed me in my life. It was a great lesson.
Yeah. So how have you taken some of that strategery, maybe some of those motor skills, and applied it to what you do now? How is that connected with your current work?
It's a great question, brother. With my work right now, what I have done is actually encapsulated the whole game plan, whatever sport it is, whatever game. It could be a board game, or it could be a sports game, or it could be a recreation game. Is I really look at our lives as a game. And I wrote a book on it. It's called the Essential Health Playbook, and it provides a game plan on how you approach your life in every aspect of it. So I think there's a lot of things that we learn in competition and sports that apply to every single thing that we do in our family and in our career, and in our health. And so not necessarily motor skills, but more of the strategery with health.
So let's dive into that. Again, I didn't make that connection before you said it. Obviously, the Essential Health Playbook, really, it is like coming back to sport, coming back to the gamification of things. And for the last week, for whatever reason, the theme of my life has been around, why don't I allow myself to play more? Why is everything so damn serious? And I can't think of a more serious topic than health, right? A lot of people are like, it's where we process dying and illness and cancer and all these bad things. But it's how does health become something that we're excited to work with? How do we gamify that? How do we make it more fun?
That is the juice, right? Because we all know we need to be healthy. But a lot of people don't really know what that means or what that looks like. And I think if you can visualize it and see what that truly means and how it applies to everything you do in your life, most everyone will be motivated to prioritize it. Health, when you ask a lot of people about it, it's like diet and exercise, right? I mean, it's kind of the classic superficial things, but how I see it in my world and in the last 20 years in clinical practice, it's a holistic method. It encapsulates your sleep and your rest and your nourishment and your movement, and play is part of that. But how you challenge yourself and how you're learning and connecting and mental fitness and your spark and your purpose. I think when you understand that health is all of that, and there's energy that we put towards all of that, and when you prioritize certain decisions every single day that are aiming towards having balance in every aspect of that, boy, that's far from, I want to look like this and I want to feel like this. It turns into a path, an illuminating path that you're excited to explore every single day. So, the long answer is, I think it's a holistic approach that really is personal for every single person. Understand what your values and your beliefs are and your goals and your version of success. And if you know those things, then you can start gamifying what you need to do throughout the day to accomplish that.
Cool. I do recognize that for a lot of people, again, you have a lot of fancy words of things that you do, right? You're a functional medicine guy, clinical nutritionist. So can you talk a little bit about that, just so I even know what bounds we're playing and like what's the sandbox? Because I'm a little familiar with functional medicine. What's the difference between a nutritionist and a clinical nutritionist?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, those are a lot of designations I paid a lot of money for to have behind my name and look like I'm really smart, right? The journey was that, I had a personal journey, and I felt like I really needed to understand everything about the body before I started recommending things. I would recommend all kinds of different lifestyle things and hacks, but that was the pursuing of all of those degrees. Functional medicine is simple. It's really just an operating system that uncovers the underlying issues that cause symptoms, conditions, and diseases in individuals. And so it's a proactive, preventative operating system that I can use with every single patient to then uncover and say, this is what we need to do. So it's used in the repair portion of individuals, but it's also a performance program. I can run genetics and blood chemistry and adrenals and run really cool questionnaires and say, here's how you're unique, Nick, and then here's what you want to do to get where you need to go. So it's a full spectrum of health and performance. Nutritionists, there's kind of like RDs, registered dietitians, where I sit down and I build you like a food plan and it's somewhat balanced. Clinical nutrition is the medicine behind the functional medicine. So if I understand your vulnerabilities, your blood chemistry, what your goals are, your family history, then I can create not only a food plan, but I can create like a true nutraceutical supplemental plan with dosages and specific formulas tailored directly to you.
Interesting. Okay, so let me make sure I'm tracking all that, because there's a lot of words in there, but it sounds like, to simplify exactly what you said, is we're using nutrition as medicine, not necessarily having to do like traditional medicines that we do in the West. And on top of that, going into more functional medicine, can you really give me like a specific example of like, what is someone comes to you with something, and then you're like, here's the functional lens versus here is the traditional medicine lens? I'd love to hear the difference between those two.
So it's kind of reactive versus proactive. And here's kind of the typical example. You go to your doctor, let's say you have GERD. So you have acid reflux and it shows up and it's really annoying. It's just not going away. And you're taking Tums and you're taking antacids and it will help a little bit, but it's persistent. And so you go to a doctor and the doctor says, here, take some Prilosec. which is known to be an acid reducer. It's called a proton pump inhibitor. And you're doing it and it kind of goes away, but then it kind of shows up as heartburn. And then you start to get fatigue because you're taking a medication. You're relying on a medication for a symptom, okay? If you go to me, I'm going to look at what you're eating. I'm going to look at the timing of what you're eating, the volume of what you're eating. I can run some labs and see what's going on with your stomach. And then I say, okay, well, these are the things you need to remove. These are the things that you need to eat. Here's some natural medicines that are going to heal the lining of your stomach, what we call the gastric environment. So let's give you a lifestyle. Let's give you a nutrition plan. Let's give you some personalized nutraceutical formulas that are going to heal your stomach rather than just a pill for an ill, So what it is, it's really the contrarian view to, you go in, you present with a problem, they give you a pill. And there's a time and a place for that. But we now know that almost all of these symptoms and conditions and diseases have an underlying pattern of dysfunction. And I want to uncover that and then fix it with your lifestyle, with what you're eating, and then with specific natural medicines.
So I'm going to go on a bit of a journey now, because that's like, I'm inspired by a lot of what you're saying. First, I wanted to mention that in aviation, it's what we call it root cause analysis. Like we have these safety management systems, right? Like something breaks on an airplane. Normally a mechanic would come in and be like, I'll fix the broken thing. We're like, what was the root cause that caused that thing to break in the first place? Let's go to that. So we're not just solving symptoms. So I get that now. I understand if that's really what functional medicine is. Let's figure out the underlying structures and see if we can solve it at that level. Going deeper into books like The Body Keeps Score, right? Like we're talking about like underlying that it may be the emotional experience or the thoughts we have that are expressing themselves in the body.
Yes.
How much are you finding that you're having to get into the, like, let's talk about what's going on up here, even though it's happening in your body somewhere else?
Yeah. That's where the juice is, brother. I mean, I've spent, again, a couple decades working with people and saying, here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what you need to do right. Let's do it with some medicines that are natural. Let's do it with this food plan. Try to remove a couple of these things and add a couple of these things. And that's natural medicine, and I've seen great results. But it's what it's in here and in here that sometimes we don't realize. And those are experiences and traumas and programming that kind of overrides what our conscious mind wants to do, right? Okay, I need to do these things, but there's a block in me that no matter what I'm doing consciously, something else is overriding that system. And it's very common. And these are energies. And, now we get into like, the holistic paradigms of medicine, the chakras, the Ayurvedic, the chi, and all of this energy kind of runs through us. And if there's a block or if there's a nervous system dysfunction, the conscious mind can only do so much. And so that's where really, like I said, the juice gets in. And how do we address that stuff? Can we do it with different mind medicines, sound therapy? Could we do it with retreats and, vision quests? Can we do it with chakra balancing? And the answer is yes. My role is to listen to your story. How are you unique? Give you the obvious things. And if I feel there's a block, then, I have enough personal history and experience to say, okay, well, let's go down a little bit deeper. Let's see what we can find there.
So let's say like a skeptical asshole shows up. Like, let's say someone comes in and is like, that's all bullshit. And they're more, again, like I'm indoctrinated on Western medicine, right? It's like something goes wrong. Someone needs to cut something out or give me medicine, right? Like that's generally the way I'm approaching it. And so I imagine you're meeting people that are coming to you and saying, I want to fix this thing. And how do you meet that skeptic? How do you meet that part that's like, bullshit, energy's not a thing?
Yeah, it's the majority of people. First of all, there's a kind of a saying that, I wrote in the book and I've been using forever is I like reasons, not rules. When you say, Nick, you need to do these things. First of all, if I hear that, I'm like, you don't know me. I'll do whatever I want, right? So if I give rules and tight parameters, I have not seen good health outcomes that way. So I would rather say, here's the reason why we're doing. Here's the risk benefit. Let's think this out together. You're coming in with a bias. You're coming in with a specific narrative. Let's just think this. I get it. I've been a patient longer than I've been a doctor. So I know this block and I know this skepticism. And so my role is because I've been on that side is, okay, where is the block? How can I inform them? How can I also just get the light bulb turned on just a little bit to get them kind of believing? Because once they believe and they see it, the floodgates open. So again, I like explaining it, communicating it in a simple way, and then providing quick wins for them to experience.
So I'm going to put you on the spot so you could opt out of this one, but is there anyone in your family, like when you think of the people you love the most and knowing that you have all this information, right? You have all this information of like, it's not just the physical, there's other stuff going on here. Is there anyone in your life, maybe it's beyond family, maybe it's even friends where you're like, you've had to watch them suffer, even though you were like, if you would just open your mind a little bit, if you would just see my perspective, I could actually help you?
The answer is yes. Many. This one's close to home. My father has Parkinson's, and we've seen it for the last 20 years. And it's a pretty nasty thing to watch. And if your viewers don't know what it is, it's a neurodegenerative problem where you lose dopamine. And, Muhammad Ali has it and Michael J. Fox has it. And it's kind of tremors and a Parkinsonian gait and some cognitive decline. And, my father's kind of, old school, which is, give me carbidopa, levodopa, Cinemet, give me the drugs that kind of change the dopamine so I can continue to play golf. I'm like, hey, Dad, there's a different way to approach this, and resistance. Now I'm his son, right? And so when the son starts giving advice to the father, there's, some interesting dynamics there. But over time, he's like, okay, I get this. I've had this quick win. He's opening up, but there's still a block, which is, this is a neurodegenerative condition. I can't reverse it. I can't really do anything to change it. And when that seed is planted in here, which is I can't, that is a hard barrier to break. So that's close to home. That's my father, cousins, family members, tons of patients, tons of friends, where if I start really talking to them, when they start talking, I can see what's going on, right? And so, ultimately what I want to do is just continue to share some wisdom and small little approaches that can change that. But that seed's in there. It's hard to change. There's a lot of people that look at the world. There's a saying I have, and it's kind of paraphrased, but it's truth, is, life unfolds in two different ways. It can happen to you or it can happen for you. And if you constantly think everything is happening to you, kind of this victim role, which I've been there many, many years, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, no matter what tool or no matter what resource I give or pill, there's still that block. And you can shift that from 2 to 4. It takes some effort, takes some vulnerability. I've seen, I won't call them miracles, but pretty damn close to when somebody just completely changes their frame of mind, and then healing can really, really occur. So,
wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I have to wonder how, like, you're a healer in a lot of ways, right? Like in like the archetypal way, you're a healer. You're someone who sees people are struggling and then you want to help them not struggle. How has it shown up knowing that, like with your dad, that must be really hard to watch someone who won't listen? You're like, I have all the information. I've got a lot of ways I can help you, and not wanting to receive that. What is the emotional experience of that like for you?
It's frustration. It's frustrating, especially a father, right? I mean, that's one of that's a close bond. So that there's a lot of frustration with it. With my patients, though, that frustration was there often. Like, I have it. I can help you. Here's the plan. Why aren't you compliant? Why aren't you doing this? I've learned throughout the years to tie into kind of a different messaging and get away from prescriptions and just talk to them and meet them where they're at. So I'm getting a lot better with that, and I've seen some great results with that. But at the end of the day, giving a lot of energy to somebody that is completely blocked, I've had over 7,000 patients in my years in practice. And sometimes it's just, I can't give any more energy because, I take that on. And so I've learned to decipher who can I invest some energy in? Can I get into that? Can I approach that block or not? And so I make an effort with every single person. I'm becoming more and more successful, but some people just aren't ready.
Yeah. That's hard. What would you share more about your journey from victim to empowered mindset? More of that, like the world is happening to me to the world is happening for me.
Yeah. Well, it happened in some dark, dark years. So when I was 18, I had a near-death experience. I crushed my organs playing sports. emergency surgery, cut me open and remove my organs. And my life changed like that. So the path that I thought I was going on changed. And I was playing the victim role for many, many years. Why did this happen to me? Okay. This shouldn't have happened. This isn't fair. And I went into dark depression. I was sort of relying on, pharmaceutical meds. I mean, it's really what has prompted this whole journey of healing. But everything that was happening, Nick, felt like it was happening to me.
Yeah.
Because, my energy and my focus was going on something external instead of what was going on in here. There was multiple events that happened in my life that started to change this. And I mean, basically one day a doctor just said, if you're not going to change, because I was in and out of the hospital subsequent to this, you're going to die in 10 years. I mean, you just need to make a choice. And I was in the right frame of mind, in the right place, and just kind of desperate and dark and just needed some light and energy. And it dawned on me, and boom. And that's when I'm obsessed with health. What do I need to do? But that programming, I believe, was inside me. I felt like innately I had a victim mindset. I knew it. I knew it how I grew up. It's somebody else's problem. And so I've tried over, the last, 3 decades to try to reframe this, and I'm becoming more and more successful. And in doing that and being in the dark and seeing the light and making these changes, I can kind of see those patterns in the people that sit across from the desk with me, and then can kind of help them with the professional framework that I have, but also kind of the personal empathy. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing and why I'm a healer. And so where I guess the answer is that you can shift this. Yeah, whatever professional or expert says, you're hardwired this way and this is the way it's going to be. I disagree. You can shift your conscious mind to be to you to for you, or half glass full, or whatever analogy that you want to use. You can shift it. Just takes a little bit of effort and consistency.
I appreciate that story. And I do want to mention that it sounds like the words from that doctor were the real medicine, right? You're going to die in 10 years.
Yeah.
If you don't do anything. And I've not thought about it that way, but I guess your words are part of the medicine experience. And it's how do you balance that hard edge of like just reality, right? People are going to you to understand reality, but then a lot of people don't want to really experience reality. I see that in the cockpit of airplane, like something goes wrong. It's like, oh, I hope this isn't an emergency. And it's like, generally it's not, but when it is, you really want to know it is so you can make a choice.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with patients where it's like, you're not going to want to hear the next thing I'm going to say, but you need to hear it?
Yeah. It's I think the gift of being an optimal communicator, and, it's not only what you say, it's how you say it. It's your body language. It's saying it at the right time when they're able to receive it. There's been times in the past where I just said, this is what's going on, and it was not received well, and that was it. And then there's times where, I give them quick wins. I give them these great things, and their energy starts to go up, and their sleep starts to get a little better, and they get a little bit of confidence, right? And their energy dial starts to move up, and they're connecting, and they're doing a little mental fitness. And I'm like, okay, I got them where they want. Here's what we need to do. So I think it's picking the right time, and having the right communication. And sometimes it's not only just what you say, it's how you say it and the timing in which you say it.
I'd love to hear more about, again, I've known you for some time, and I know this is like a really exciting time for you with the books out. You've got your method, and I'm wondering, like, what was the hole that you were trying to fill, and what is the method?
Yeah. The method was the hole I was trying to fill. The method is a summary of everything that I've been through personally, being at dead ends, going to a gastroenterologist and giving pills, going to an endocrinologist because I'm a diabetic and just relying on insulin, going to an immunologist because I don't have a spleen and I'm immune compromised. I went to every single doctor through some of the most prestigious places, Stanford and UCSF and Scripps Clinic in San Diego. Those are kind of big medical research facilities in California. And great doctors, and they were giving me great medicines, but they weren't giving me the medicine that I needed, which was in here and in here. And that's the birth of the Lazarus Method, is what I felt like was lacking, and then started to cherry pick all of this education, this official knowledge and education, going through the Institute for Functional Medicine and learning about food and the complexity of food and exactly how exercise works and how important sleep is. And, and so I kind of like taken all of it and wrapped it into this framework. And that's what it is. There's 7 essential health elements, and every single one of them is important. If you neglect one of them, in my opinion, I believe that you cannot achieve optimal health. And that's the aspects of the learn, the challenge, connect, and then ultimately your purpose and your spark. So I took all of this, I was going through some personal healing. I was working with patients. I was in the trenches. I was seeing what was working, what wasn't. And then the birth of this really was journaling for the last 10 years and seeing what was working and what wasn't, and saying, okay, I have a method. This is my life's mission, and I want to share it with people. Started doing it, started seeing great results, refined it to try to make it continually better, and said, okay, it's time to come out of this hole. There's a lot of therapy in writing this. I mean, it was super emotional, Nick. I mean, I wrote my story in there, and I was kind of documenting stories I've had with patients that hopefully that the reader can relate with. It was super emotional, but so it was therapy. It was my therapy, but it's also I'm ready to launch this and announce it to the world, because this method, this holistic framework works. I'm super excited about it. And so, I have an obligation to share it, and that's my mission.
Well, thanks for doing that, man. I think we could use more of that in the U.S. for sure. Right. Especially in a place where there is so much disconnection. And I don't know if I've shared this on the show before, but I've struggled with a lot of chronic illness growing up. And, it's like medicate this and try that and cut this out and do this. And so like my relation to this is I didn't go through a single traumatic event, but I went through kind of the collapse of my system. I remember in 4th grade, I went to a nurse at school, and I said, I feel really sick. I feel like I'm going to throw up. And she goes, oh, well, what happened today? I said, I got my report card. And she goes, oh, did your parents give you a hard time about your grades? I was like, no. And it turned out that I was such a perfectionist that 1 B on the report card made me nauseous. No one else gave me that, right? That was my own wiring. And I'm sure, it came up from whatever environments I was in or whatever. There was some need to be a perfectionist. Maybe I was born that way for all I know, but I never really understood until in my 30s when I was like, wow, all those feelings of fear, of inadequacy were all showing up in the body. And I spent 20 years just doctor after doctor after doctor trying to figure out, why do I feel this way? So I really appreciate that you're bringing more awareness to this thing, that I hope some teenager out there doesn't have to go through that same process I did, of like same thing you did, right? It's like, we're going to try all these things and only find out that, oh, all this time it was about healing my emotional state around this, or understanding myself and knowing that that feeling in my stomach was a signal for me to meet myself and face myself. So yeah, I'm very curious now, like as someone who has the level of awareness of self that you do, which is an assumption, but I think even from our interactions, I believe that to be true. What do you, like, what's your edge now? Like, what is the thing where you're like, damn, dude, I've got this stuff that's still showing up and causing problems for me?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. I think your story is so common. You start really talking to people and understanding their story. We all have these things. And by the way, that's one of your superpowers, is a perfectionist. And you've leveraged it and you've used it in different aspects of your life professionally, right? I mean, a great pilot is a perfectionist. And so, you got to think about it that way. Another thing too, is if you understand like what's going on in your mind, your brain, your hypothalamus, which is, the processing part of the brain, does not differentiate from external stress or internal stress. Meaning you saw a grade, it was processed in the hypothalamus, this isn't right. And the body does is exactly what it should be doing, which is creating a physiological response to that. Because again, the part of we call this in functional medicine the HPA axis. It's the hypothalamus's perception of internal or external stress, sends a signal to a little gland in your brain called the pituitary, which is like, the ultimate maestro with hormones, turns this hormone, turns that hormone off, produces this thing called ACTH, Nick. It's called adrenocorticotropin hormone. That goes boom, right down to your adrenals, and your adrenals produce epinephrine, adrenaline, and cortisol. And then what does that do? Immediately, it's going to shut down your gut. So what you were feeling was a GI mechanism of nausea from an internal stressor. And so that's part of my reasons and not rules. If I explain it to you, then it's, instead of you going, what the hell's wrong with me? If you understand, oh no, it's my body. Now, how can I step back and say, oh, I can observe that. And that's where mental fitness comes in. And mental fitness is, to answer your question, one of the most important tools that I use and what I coach my patients on. And it's meditation, it's mindfulness. But when you do this and you learn how to train your mind instead of your mind training you, you can sit back and you can have that awareness and you can become a witness and observer of all of these things. That roommate in your head just continuing to talk to you no matter where you go, just constantly chirping. When you practice this and you realize that there's duality there and you are not your thoughts and you are not your emotions, you can just sit back and kind of listen. You'd be like, no. When you practice that, it gets better and better. So here you go. You got a symptom, you know what's going on. And then you can step back and go, I'm aware of what's going on. Now let me work on, maybe I can control that with my breath. Maybe I can use a mantra that can reset that. And if you practice that over and over, you can rewire that autonomic function. So it's a long answer. I'm always trying to work on improving my awareness. And I believe that sitting back and focusing on one single thing and training your mind, which would be called mental fitness in my book and in my program, is a huge key, a major key on how we understand our thoughts and our symptoms.
I've not heard it as mental fitness before, but I like that a lot. I'm curious, like if that plays out in your actual day, right? You're like, hey, I just got triggered. My adrenals just fired off. My GI is shutting down. What is your choice of action in that moment?
Yeah. The great defense is a good offense. And so I do this myself and I coach a lot of people, is that I know these are inevitably going to happen. It might not be to the point of, oh, my stomach hurts because I was triggered. But here's the thing. When we know there will be inevitable setbacks during the day. I mean, the Stoics told this, right? I mean, this philosophy has been shared for thousands of years. Prepare for life's inevitable setbacks, barriers, and challenges and problems. And so if I know that's going to be there, then I can prepare for how I want to respond when that does actually occur. So what for me is if I can realize at that moment, oh, I've already seen this happen. This is when I execute this game plan proactively. It's usually breath and something that reminds me, oh no, I'm just observing this. Here's my pattern. I've already seen this. I know what to do. Here's what I can do. I can control my breath and I can control my mind. And so no matter what barrier or obstacle, that's what has worked for me. But that takes discipline because that's part of like your game plan, right? So I advocate everybody in the morning, take a moment and take inventory of where their headspace is and put together an offensive game plan and a defensive game plan. And what I just alluded to is a defensive game plan. I'm going to get triggered somehow. It could be a nasty email. It could be somebody cutting you off in traffic. It could be you're triggered by, your partner or a child. It doesn't matter. We have these things all the time. If you see yourself proactively in that position, then you can respond how you want. And then that gets easier to do it rather than being there and having a stimulus reflex. And so my answer is I wake up every morning and kind of go through this process and protocol to prepare my offensive and my defensive game plan. And all of a sudden life becomes like a game. Like I alluded to at the very beginning, it's kind of like a game where, oh, I've already seen this. I know what I do. I just execute this. It's not that easy all the time, but it's a great game plan when you practice it and you get good at it.
You sound like more of a baseball coach than a baseball player, but I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. That's really cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm really excited to dive into the book, to be honest. It's especially as you're talking about this, I'm really curious to think about that because I don't prepare. That's the problem is like I generally have moved through life saying, oh, I'll be fine when I get there. And it's the same thing over and over. And I'm like, nope, wasn't fine on that one either. And that feeling of like, you're right, an email comes in. I'll even see like a little corner notification on my computer. And it's something, and I'm like, oh, that's probably bad. Like the way stomach drops. I'm like, oh, that just blew me for an hour. Like I don't have necessarily the tools to get back to centered. And that is something that I've been working more on with my time. So yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out.
I created it's a framework. It's, I mean, there's all a bunch of frameworks and there's methods and there's approaches. And I'm not saying this is it, but this works. It works very, very well. And it was actually created in the spirit of the Morning Miracle, the book. Have you ever heard of that? Hal Elrod. Part of it, what I've created in the morning is it's a playbook. It's called the Prepare Playbook. And so you wake up and it's presence, number one. So before you get on a phone, a TV, anything that distracts you, okay? Before you're connected to the matrix, take inventory. How did I sleep? How do I feel? And were the decisions I made the previous day in alignment with what my goals are without judgment, okay? So before you just boom, go into the pattern of just continuing to have those same thoughts and those same actions, which we inevitably do, just inject a little bit of examine self there. And then that's where I love to practice mental fitness and then create just like a personal intention, an offensive or a defensive intention. And, you know, I call that reinforce. If I already know that this is one of the things I'm trying to do, that I just reinforce that goal. And then I envision it. I visualize myself going through my day. So today is Friday. We're having this podcast on a Friday. And before I did this, okay, I'm gonna have this podcast. These are the meetings I have. I have these calls. I got to take my son to this. I have dinner plans here. I just, in my mind, I'm just going through it. And we all do this intuitively, but if I know that eventually I'm going to be triggered somehow, and I have a defensive game plan, I've already done it. Just getting this playbook and open it and reminding, I'm like, okay, that's right. It doesn't take long at all. It takes me sometimes 5 to 15 minutes. And it is a default part of my day. And that's what I would love for you to try, or any of the listeners, is just open up a playbook and say, what's my game plan today? You would never go into a game without even thinking about, you know, what you want to do or what you want to accomplish or what is the goal, right? Same thing. Would you ever get into a plane and not have the foresight of, okay, where are we going? What's my line? It's just life throws so many different curveballs. I believe that you can handle all those curveballs how you want to respond when you just take a moment and be preemptive with it.
Yeah, thank you for making that connection too. I'm like, oh yeah, flight planning, right? Like I'm going to do my flight plan. I'm going to do my pre-flight. Do you have like an actual playbook written out? Do you have something where like you go to and you're like, this is what I reference when I want to go back to some of my moves?
I have tons of super effective worksheets that as people go through the program, I give it to them and I make them fill it out. Now, they don't do it through the whole program, but there's something in thinking and writing it. So they do it for 3 days in a row and they're like, holy crap, this is amazing. But I'm trying to build in habits, right? Now we get into the James Clear Atomic Habits things, and it's super important. But ultimately what I'm trying to do is build this as rituals and as habits for people. So I'll give them a worksheet. They'll just do it. And once they see the value in it and they get all of these awesome wins during the day, then it just, with repetition, they don't need to write it down anymore. But yeah, there's all kinds of awesome worksheets we have.
Cool. I'm kicking myself because it's, you know, since I was 13, I was flying airplanes, you know, in a flight instruction environment. And one of the first things we do is we focus on kind of emergency checklists. Like something goes sideways, even as a pilot, like I've done it 1,000 times, but I know if something goes wrong, if it's in these categories that would be considered an emergency, go do the thing, do the checklist, right? Because your brain's going to be hijacked. You're going to miss something. I've never thought about creating like my own emergency checklist for my day, knowing that like I've had a lot of things go sideways and I know what there's only so many emotional responses I can have. So I'm inspired to do that. I actually really want to create like my pilot operating handbook for my life with all the little emergency checklists. That's super
so cool that you said that. It's a life emergency system, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes they're real big emergencies and sometimes there's just a beeping light, right? Sometimes there's a check engine light and you just say, ignore the check engine light, right?
That's right.
We're too busy. And so, you know, this concept, this protocol or approach applies to a check engine light or, you know, that beeping, break glass. We got a big emergency here. I love that idea.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. I'm excited. I really am excited to check out the content and then apply it in the way my brain works. So kind of coming up to the question of, again, you have a lot of stuff that you've done, right? And you've had a lot of life experience all around. So it's like, it sounds like you've had more in your life than most people have in multiple lifetimes. Not all good, obviously, right? You've had the dark and the light.
Yeah.
What's your dream beyond?
I love that, brother. I've thought about it, and I feel at this point in my life, I'm 46 years old. I know it. It happened from three things, and then I'll tell you. It happened from obviously the traumatic injury to myself. It happened from time in nature in isolation. My parents sent me on a wilderness camp when I was 16 years old before this happened. It's called National Outdoor Leadership School, and there's a lot of time to sit there and think. And I truly believe that when you remove all this distractions and you're there completely bored and you have nothing to just there with your thoughts, and they call them vision quests, and you can get into these great retreats that do it. That allows you to listen to the soul a little bit, because the ego kind of shuts down and the soul kind of opens up a little bit. And so I think presence and silence and stillness, if you can do that, is almost a prerequisite for trying to uncover what is in here, what's your spark, as I call it, what's your purpose. And then, I've been through some healing retreats, using different mind medicines through, the last 6 years, a lot of different types of medicines that have then helped me purge this scar tissue of what I have went through and kind of illuminate myself and my soul and make sense of it. And that's what these medicines can do. And so all of those experiences has led me to what happened to me because I have a message. And my message is that you have the power in here and in here to achieve whatever you want. You can heal. The biology of belief is non-negotiable. What you put out in the universe, what you connect to source, the frequency you're tuned into 100% will govern your life when you have it. And when it's appropriate to your health, and you understand that navigating our health in all of this just overwhelming environment that we live in 2024 when we're recording this, and you can tune into yourself and you can get into the right frequency, that the sky is the limit. And I feel like I have gone through and have the tools, and now my legacy is to share this with people. And so that is my dream, is that this approach, this method could live on and I could teach other people, and it kind of outlives me. And so that would be right now what my long answer is.
Fantastic. No, it's a beautiful legacy, right? Giving more people more life in all the ways of that metaphor. So yeah, thank you for saying that. I wanted to touch on some of my biggest takeaways from this. I really, really like reasons, not rules. I mean, what a powerful way to navigate the world and to be in relationship with people. Yeah. It's like, wow, how many of us are actually giving shoulds and coulds and you need to do this, instead of just saying, hey, here's why I wish this would change, or here's the why behind that. That's beautiful. And it's a great reminder. I also like that, again, what leaked out in that story of that doctor was just the hard edge of real feedback. When we have the courage to give real feedback to other people, sometimes that's the medicine that they really need. Yeah. And I appreciate that you do it, but you do it in such a loving way. You actually have both a hard and a soft edge at the same time. Like, this is what's true, and I feel cared for at the same time. And you've supported me in some things too. So yeah. I know that personally. The concept of mental fitness, and again, I think it's like, meditation, all these things that people do, but really, really getting to that space of like, I can witness myself, I can watch my process, and I can do something about it. And I'm, again, like so stoked about the idea of like, I'm physically going to create an aviation themed pilot operating handbook for myself and give it to my fiance. And hopefully in the future, I'll give it to my kids and maybe even some of my coworkers. Right. And it's like, I love that. I love that idea. When everything goes wrong, can I go back to processes and stuff that I know really works in emergencies? So thank you, man. This has been really great. And I hope for those that are listening, again, please check out Ryan's book. I mean, it sounds like just an incredible amount of wealth and knowledge. And again, you've gone through such a journey. Thank you for codifying it into a way that we can all receive it and benefit from it. And the book's called The Essential Health Playbook. You get that anywhere books are sold. You can also check out the Lazarus Method online and, check out this whole process. And Ryan, is there anything else you want to add as far as calls to action, anything you're inspired to share with the listeners?
Yes. Health can feel like it's a lot of pressure. Get better, try one thing, reflect on it. Set a little goal, set a little challenge, try this, reflect on it. Even if you didn't do it, take a step back, say, what did I learn from this? There's no failures. They're all lessons. Sometimes health gets so damn complicated. These filled with social media stuff and books and protocols and all of this. And people, it's paralysis by analysis, where if you just try a couple things and it resonates with you and you reflect and kind of look, and did I do this well? If not, what did I learn? Is it important to me? Can I do it better tomorrow? Takes the pressure off it. So that's kind of my last real thought to a listener is, if you want to get healthy, there's a roadmap for it, and do your best, but don't judge yourself, because it's hard. It's really, really hard to find perfect ideal health with all these aspects. So that's my final thing. And I also want to thank you for bringing me on. I love the amount of honesty and genuine, energy that you bring. I love the podcast. I love, the previous episodes. So I wish you the best of luck. I know it's going to do great. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Hope you all enjoyed.